There is a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about the world of Hollywood and celebrity. It's understandable because you know it's a world full of lies, manipulation, and deception. But the problem is, there's not a lot of accurate information about how they are lying, manipulating, and deceiving you. There's a lot of conjecture and conspiracy theories, but I get it. It's hard to follow and keep track of all the lies, manipulation, and deception while trying to connect the thread, especially if you haven't studied or worked in the entertainment industry. Because I have, let me burst Hollywood's bubble for you. Did you know a lot of the most successful stars working in Hollywood began working in the entertainment industry when they were under the age of 18? Are all notable examples of stars who were groomed as children by Hollywood, which allowed them to become the successful stars you may know them to be. Their pathway to success may not have been perfect, and all of them don't have happy endings, but their early experiences within Hollywood is the thread that connects them all. So let's unwind that thread. With the success of Jackie Coogan and Shirley Temple during its golden age, studios and parents saw the opportunity to profit off of children, and they just couldn't help themselves. And just like Dr. Ian Malcolm said,
"We're so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should."
There are a few different reasons why Hollywood targets children. Children have a charm and innocence that cannot be replicated by adults, especially when they're born with a gift to entertain others. Because they do, they generate a far wider audience. The wider the audience, the bigger the profits. Adults have vices that children don't have, and their Hollywood stars just couldn't keep them private. As a result, the constant scandals circulating around the media was damaging Hollywood's reputation. By incorporating children into their star system in the 1920s, they hoped it would help alleviate this problem, even though it seemed to always end in failure. Because there's nothing more a teenager wants than self-autonomy, and when they don't get it, they rebel. But it never stopped them from trying. Merchandise is another stream of revenue that generates a lot of income for Hollywood. Hollywood owns the rights to their films, shows, and records. We classify that ownership as intellectual property or IP. Hollywood licenses that IP to manufacturers to produce goods for sale, while they sit back passively and collect loads of money. The combination of profit and control is the predatory reason why children exist in Hollywood, and it's why they did everything in their power to make sure there were little to no laws protecting children working in the entertainment industry. The Infancy Doctrine gave children the right to terminate their contracts whenever they felt like it because it was commonly understood that children don't have the comprehension to read and understand the contracts they're signing. Surprise, surprise! Hollywood didn't like it because it prevented them from signing children to long-term contracts. Like I said in the previous episode, Hollywood invests a lot of money in their stars and the engine that drives celebrity. Overnight successes are not real, they are bred. Studios weren't going to lose their investments and potential profits to their competitors, so they used their power to lobby the California legislature to put an end to it, and it laid the foundation for the predatory contracts that would chain children to studios and record companies, allowing them to get high off of their success for the next 100 years. When federal child labor laws were passed in 1938, which took children out of the workforce, it didn't apply to child entertainers because they brought so much joy to people, it would be a detriment to society if their jobs became a crime. With Hollywood's lobbying, child entertainers became exempt under the Shirley Temple Act, named after Shirley Temple, of course, who not only made Hollywood a shit ton of money, but also distracted Americans from their government's constant failures. So why would they make it illegal? The beauty of child labor laws is that children were able to get an education and have the freedom to interact and engage with the world they're about to become a part of and contribute to as they grow into adults. Since child entertainers were exempt from the law, Hollywood put their propaganda machine to work and sold families across America a dream. A dream that one day these families will rise up and live out the true spirit of the California Gold Rush. Hollywood holds these truths to be self-evident. There is wealth to be made in California. A dream that one day, on a small district of Hollywood, the sons and daughters of nobodies will be able to cement their names on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and become somebodies. A dream that one day, the District of Hollywood, sweltering with the success of its studios, sweltering with the success of its record companies, will transform them into a family of great status and wealth. A dream that their children will one day live in a place where they will not be limited by their age, but by their ability to stay in character. And they bought it. And parents all across the US packed their bags and brought them to a land of debauchery. A place where morality is only an image, not a reality, robbing them of their ability to ever experience the luxuries of childhood bestowed upon us by our government. When stories come out about the abuses of children in Hollywood, the very first question to come to mind is, where are their parents? When it comes to the safety of a child, their parents or guardians are their first line of defense and first line of attack when there is a threat against their child. But when parents naively trust Hollywood handlers and caretakers to look after their children without their supervision, or sign contracts without thoroughly reading and understanding what they signed their child up for, exploiters are going to exploit, allowing children to suffer from abuse and exploitation. Naive parents are ignorant, but I'm not going to be harsh and say they don't care. But I consider them the minority. However, stage parents who are the majority are a different breed, valuing themselves and their circumstances before their child, exploiting their children without any guilt or remorse, leaving them susceptible to outsiders to come in and exploit their child even more, who treat them like adults and encourage them to emancipate themselves, to work longer hours, or convince them to partake in their illicit activities. Hollywood knows the prey they're attracting and recruiting. It's parents who let their child parent or stage parents willing to partner up with Hollywood to exploit their child. The reality is, any parent that truly cares about the health and well-being of their child would never let their child work in Hollywood, ever. When parents make sacrifices for their child's Hollywood dream, or their Hollywood dream, it's impossible for them to work and have stable jobs to support themselves and their families, unless they have parents already working in Hollywood or come from a well-off family. In order to make it in Hollywood, you always have to be available. You're on their time. They don't care to run on yours. And if a child is not good enough, parents have to invest to grow their child's talent and abilities so they'll be able to book projects. A lot of time, effort, and money gets poured into child stars. Like I said, they're bread. When the child star starts to get booked and the money starts pouring in, it's natural for parents to feel entitled to it. They made it happen, so it's theirs to spend, even if it's their child doing all the work. What makes it worse is their parents think their fame and fortune is going to last forever, but it rarely ever happens. So they end up mismanaging most of their child's money by the time their child turns 18. Just imagine having to give up your childhood and any semblance of normalcy, only to find out you barely have enough money to sustain yourself for less than 5 years. And that's a generous assessment. When Hollywood's first child star Jackie Coogan became of age, he wanted to have access to all the money he's worked hard for, only to find out his parents spent almost all of it, which is enough to piss anybody off. He sued his parents for the remainder, and the Coogan Act was born. Coogan's Act was designed to set up a savings account or trust to set aside a percentage of a child star's income that would become accessible to them when they turn 18. It didn't stop their parents from robbing them broke. Although adjustments to the laws have been made to prevent parents from spending all of their child's money, it only mandates a minimum of 15% of a child's gross income to be deposited into the account. If you ask me, it should be 50, but I don't make the laws. The Coogan's Act is only valid in New York, California, Illinois, Louisiana, and New Mexico, meaning their rights are only protected in those states. Even if a child entertainer's parents had the best intentions and tried their very best to protect their child from Hollywood, they still couldn't do it without taking them out of the industry completely. Fame, money, and the way Hollywood conducts its business eats away at any form of stability they could possibly have in life and a child's relationship to their family. It truly brings out the worst in people and destroys families. And if they already come from an unstable family and circumstances, it only makes it worse. Hollywood has unrealistic expectations, and they truly believe there is a formula to marketability and success. There are only certain looks that'll sell. There are only certain personalities that will sell. There are only certain lifestyles that'll sell. There are only certain beliefs that'll sell. There are only certain stories that'll sell. There are only certain music and sounds that will sell. Everything needs to be packaged and perfect. That is not healthy for any child, and it robs them from any autonomy and sense of self, which are critical to function in life. Most, if not all, child entertainers struggle with their identity and who they are because they've been conditioned to think in a way that makes them box themselves in, and it causes them to become very self-hating people, which manifests into rebellions, eating disorders, cosmetic procedures, body dysmorphia, drugs and alcohol abuse, self-harm, and sadly, even taking their own lives. Hollywood and its engine knows this is happening under their watch, and they don't care. For over 100 years, they've continued to overwork children, pushing them to their brinks as long as they can squeeze every penny out of their success. They will finesse the laws if they need to. They will separate them from their families. They will force unhealthy body standards on them. They will give children drugs if it benefits them. There is nothing they have not done and will not do. And it's sick to know that parents knowingly or unknowingly consented to this behavior, which is why no parent is innocent no matter what their intentions are. After they've squeezed every last penny, they will dispose of them because they are no longer profitable. Whatever happens as a consequence is not their problem. They audition in front of adults, they perform in front of adults, they work for adults, they work with adults, they interview with adults. Most of their interactions are with adults who treat them like adults. Hollywood doesn't know how to interact with children. But then again, it's an industry that doesn't know how to care, which is why children become prematurely exposed to sexuality, and if Hollywood is not sexualizing them already, they're doing it themselves. The people operating and working in Hollywood have always been perverse, and there are multiple layers why. Some people find it funny when children are put into adult situations, but when does it go too far and become inappropriate? A very early example is Baby Burlesques, which stars a 3-year-old Shirley Temple and other young children posing as adults. Temple herself was playing the role of an erotic dancer and prostitute dressed in sexually suggestive clothing, while the other young boys around her were wearing nothing but diapers for all of the series. All throughout the series, the director forced them to perform sexually suggestive acts while physically and emotionally abusing the children when they weren't complying with his requests. Nickelodeon has a history of exploiting the innocence of child actors, making them perform inappropriate, sexually suggestive acts under the disguise of humor. None of this is funny or satire. It's gross and it needs to stop. No matter what their position is or how much money they make, it doesn't guarantee that these severely insecure men and women in Hollywood could have whomever they want. So they prey on and groom young children, starting relationships with them to make them feel good about themselves. And it's sick. Gloria Graham and Woody Allen groomed and started relationships with their stepchildren and married them. At 26, R. Kelly exploited, groomed, and married Aaliyah when she was only 15. At 24, Elvis Presley began grooming Priscilla when she was just 14 and married her when she became of age. At 39, Jerry Seinfeld dated a 17-year-old he met at Central Park. Drake is allegedly out here grooming minors. And there's way too many more to count. They choose to separate minors from their parents. They choose to engage in inappropriate relationships with minors. They choose to inappropriately act around minors. They choose to write inappropriate content for minors to perform. They choose to produce them. They choose to direct them. They choose to cast older actors to play a minor's romantic interest. They choose to act in these inappropriate projects. They cover up any misconduct and they normalize their behavior, creating a culture of it. It's a morally corrupt way to make money, but an easy way to make money by sexualizing underage boys and girls to other underage girls and boys, but also creeps. The easiest way for minors to emancipate themselves from their contract, management, image, or parents is by publicly expressing their sexuality. They become too much of a liability to the company, so they free them from their contracts and obligations. And when it comes to their other relationships, they have no choice but to allow them to do what they want.
Police! Police! Help! Police! Help! Police! Help! Help! Police! Help!
Children should not be obligated to uphold their contracts if they want out. Children should not be forced to work like adults. Children should not be robbed of an education. Children should not be robbed of their childhood in interacting with other children. Children should not be robbed of their ability to think critically. Children should not be able to be used by their parents to make money or get rich. Children should not be groomed into perfect stars. Children should not be groomed for profit. Children should not be forced to only know how to sell and be marketable. Children should not be taught to hate themselves. Children should not be exposed to creating inappropriate relationships with adults. Children should not be over-sexualized or feel forced to over-sexualize themselves. Children should not be exposed to predators. Children should never be allowed to be groomed by predators. And until Hollywood changes the way they interact with and cater to children, no child should ever be legally allowed to work in Hollywood. If they can't build their schedules and sets around children, they should not be allowed to work with children. I know there are kids out there that have Hollywood dreams, and I know there are parents who want to make this dream come true for their child. But the dream they sold you isn't real. It never was. It was nothing but an illusion to create a never-ending pipeline to supply them with more children to use and dispose of when they're finished, only to be left with nothing and own absolutely nothing. The more you know.